Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're going to be doing a couple of things. First, we'll be talking about this new deal that has been agreed to between Amazon and MGM, and also what some of the response has been to this, including the potential that you might see the deal get stopped at some point. As we all know, whenever it comes to major mergers between giant corporations, typically they have to go through a long process to make sure that there's no antitrust violations, and sometimes they need to actually get approval for that process to actually go through. And I felt like this was also a story that was connected enough to the box office to be able, and the impact and the future impact of the box office, to be able to also do a box office breakdown. And so I'm combining those into two for this. And so if you don't care about this first story, you might want to skip ahead to the actual box office breakdown. But before I go any further, please be sure to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, and light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. I upload my videos to Minds.com, Odyssey, and YouTube, and so any interactions on those platforms would be greatly appreciated. So let's first start off with the big news that broke this week, which of course is that Amazon is set to purchase MGM for the price of $8.45 billion. Now, before actually getting into what the response to this has been, specifically from senators in the United States, let's go ahead into the actual event itself. So it says, Amazon announced the purchase of MGM for $8.45 billion in a press release on May 26, 2021. In that release, they stated that the two companies have entered into a definitive merger agreement under which Amazon will acquire MGM for a purchase price of $8.45 billion, which of course is a very large amount of money, though in the modern world, compared to other mergers, it's not as big as it might seem. What is interesting though is, remember that not too long ago, back in 2012, Star Wars, all of Star Wars was bought up for about $4 billion or so from George Lucas. And so I do find that to be kind of interesting, especially when you look and see the vast amount of films, including mass franchise movies, that they have in their repertoire, especially also in television as well. So as it says right here, Mike Hobbins, the senior vice president of Prime Video and Amazon Studios, then touted MGM's catalog of films, saying that it has over 4,000 films, including 12 Angry Men, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, Basic Instinct, Creed, James Bond franchise, Legally Blonde, Moonstruck. You got films like Raging Bull, RoboCop, the Rocky franchise as well, or at the very least the first Rocky film. We all know that sometimes as movie franchises go on, sometimes studios change hands. They sell the rights of individual films, or some creator who does not have exclusive rights to one studio can move around, but these are the ones that have been listed. You also have the Tomb Raider, Stargate, Silence of the Lambs, Magnificent Seven, Thomas Crown Affair, many others, including television shows like Fargo, The Handmaid's Tale, which is, again, despite what anyone else's thoughts are, I personally have no interest in it myself. It is a huge show. And then also Vikings, which I know a lot of people who follow me are a big fan of as well. And so a lot of major IPs are going to be involved in this deal. Now, the number one question that typically comes up, and including comes up for me, is Amazon, already a massive corporation, which is already involved in the buying and selling of different products, which of course has led to a lot of criticism because, one, there's a question of the labor laws being respected, labor laws being violated, about the working conditions in many of the places and packing plants, not just across other nations, including in China, but also in other parts of the world as well. And you also, of course, have the question of when is it going to be enough for Amazon as far as controlling various parts of different areas of the marketplace. So for instance, they have Amazon, which of course competes with many small businesses that sell various products from a wide variety of places. You also, of course, have them involved in the streaming wars. So they have their own content as their own studio. They also buy up content or rent content to show on their platform. And you also, of course, have them involved in many other places. And so now, by acquiring a major studio like MGM and now integrating them into their system as well, you start to ask the question, are they getting too big? Is there a violation of antitrust law going on now in this merger, especially when Amazon earlier this year got into a little hot water because it totally deplatformed a place like Parler, which, despite anyone's opinion about it, the fact that they have Amazon Web Services and that many websites rely on it really just goes to show how powerful Amazon is, much like other major corporations. And so one of the biggest components opponents of this deal going through is U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, who has reacted to it by saying that he does not think it should be allowed to go through. It says here, the senator posted to Twitter that the sale should not go through. He went on to state Amazon is already a monopoly platform that owns e-commerce, shipping, groceries, and the cloud, and concluded that they shouldn't be permitted to buy anything else, period. And so again, I think that that is a fair point to be made because obviously it is a major corporation. There are certain laws in the books, which is why it'll have to go through a process and the government will either give them the thumbs up or thumbs down. The issue, of course, is that we all know Jeff Bezos, just like other major billionaires who are in charge of these corporations, with their money are able to influence a lot of people, including a lot of people in Washington. And so the question is left with, are we going to get an actual legal or fair result, or is it going to be tainted by money being shifted behind the scenes, or has it already been set up because of different dealings that have been going on? These are all questions that I think need to be asked. Not to mention, of course, this is going to have a major impact on the marketplace because with MGM bringing the next James Bond movie and the entire James Bond series and other franchises as well to their platform, you are now seeing them grow as a streaming giant, of which they already were one of the major streaming platforms and now have been able to bolster that if indeed the actual sale goes through and they are actually able to add those to the library, which makes the question be asked of, will the theaters be able to survive now that Amazon is seemingly in a position to grow even bigger than what it already was? Not only were they already making their own films with Amazon Studios, but now they'll have an actual, classic name that's been around since the 1920s. It's been around for a long time, been a major part of film history. And not only will they have all of those different properties, but it means they will also be able to reboot said properties and do a lot of other things with them as well. And so that, of course, raises the question, will this have a major impact on the box office with some of these movies no longer being as prominent in the movie theaters themselves and more so left to streaming services? Of course, the question also is what's going to happen with James Bond No Time to Die? Is that film going to be put onto Amazon Prime for people to watch if they have a Prime membership, or are they going to still release it into theaters? These are questions that obviously will be answered as the course of this merger goes on, whether it goes through or not. And I honestly think that if it does go through and if Amazon pushes streaming as they seem to be, because they're very much about pushing for online exclusive content, right? People using their phones to buy products, to watch products, to consume products. And I would see that they would continue that after acquiring MGM as well, which of course will have a major impact on the box office, which is, again, getting now into the box office breakdown portion of this episode. It is also something that I think anyone who's a fan of movie theaters or anyone else in Hollywood and other major studios should probably be concerned about, because the box office has really not been in a very good place. Even though we can point to films that have made some money, obviously the number one movie that really has made any profit at all in the entire world is Demon Slayer, the film, which made crazy amounts of money in Japan, in various marketplaces, is even still doing well here. It's made about $43 million in the domestic marketplace, which is very impressive for an anime film. You also, of course, have the other major amounts of money it's made in the other Asian markets as well. It's the only film that really we can point to that has been an actual box office success in a major way during this time of pandemic. Of course, there's other films that have made lots of money. For instance, you look to films like Godzilla vs. Kong, which is getting very, very close, and with the holiday weekend coming up, it very well could reach the $100 million or at the very least get very close to the $100 million mark at the domestic marketplace. But as you can see, it is adding theaters this past weekend, so it is still doing relatively well, making over $1 million, which is better than what we can say for films like Mortal Kombat. Godzilla being out for 8 weeks versus Mortal Kombat's 5. You can see the legs of Godzilla vs. Kong are actually a lot better than what maybe even people like I myself would have thought in the beginning, though my projections did have the film reaching at least the $500 million mark to make some profit. So we'll have to, of course, wait and see if this weekend and other countries that are still not yet releasing of that movie, that might eventually, in I think June and July, there's a couple of countries that are going to join in on that, if that will make any difference whatsoever. But this past weekend saw really no major new releases. Scoob got a re-release and came in at number 8. And then you also had a couple of other smaller films like New Order, Final Account, and The Dry. Again, very, very limited in only hundreds of theaters. So Spiral, which came out last weekend, which is set in the Saw universe, was able to once again get the number 1 spot with 4.9 $33.5 million. And even though it only had a 47% drop from its opening weekend, which in most situations would be a pretty good drop, when you look at how much money, or rather how little money it made in its opening weekend, it actually still has a little bit to be concerned about, especially since you have major films like A Quiet Place Part 2 and Cruella coming out this weekend, even though Cruella will not be nearly as impactful because it will also be available on Disney+, which means not only will you have people watching it, though I don't know who would honestly pay $30 to watch it on Disney+, but what that means is that it will be much more easily pirated, and that, of course, is going to be something that I think everyone's going to have to take into account when looking at the numbers for any of the movies that get released on streaming, because that becomes that much more prominent. But Spiral coming in with still $4.5 million based on the projections on the chart that I typically show is actually not very good for it. In fact, the film is potentially going to lose money, and for a film that only costs around $20 million to make, that is not looking good. Wrath of Man continues to be pretty strong for a lower budget film at $2.9 million. Those Who Wish Me Dead continues to really not do all that well with $1.9 million. And Raya and the Last Dragon, which still is a massive flop, is still making $1 million a weekend. So again, I guess Disney has something to look forward to and be happy about with that. So going into the actual numbers themselves, Spiral has now reached $23.5 million in the worldwide marketplace. So as I said, it costs about $20 million to make, meaning that with marketing, it's around $30 million. It only gets around 60% or so of the entire box office take. And so as you can see, the film still has a ways to go before actually breaking even. And I've mentioned this previously. I think this film would have been much better off had they released it in October instead. But also, this is in a franchise, the Saw franchise, which has been decreasing in interest for a long time now, since the series really went on a little bit too long past when it should have. Wrath of Man, again, a film that I really want to see, the new Guy Ritchie film, $63.5 million, which based on the obviously the predicted box office budget, I have not been able to find that yet. And as I said with previous videos, if you can find the budgets to a few of these films that have not been reported, that'd be great. But I would assume, based on the fact that it's a Guy Ritchie film and based on the fact that it looks like a more lower budget film, that it would probably cost between $20 and $50 million. And so this movie could therefore be profitable, but it depends on how much that movie actually cost. Films that don't really look like they're probably going to be nearly as well off are films like Those Who Wish Me Dead, which is made by one of my favorite writers working in Hollywood today, Taylor Sheridan, who did not the John Wick movies. He did the Sicario films, which I really love. He did a couple of other movies. Only the Brave was another film that he did. Wind River was another one he did as well. That was also his directorial debut. So he's done really good work before, especially with writing. This film just missed the mark in a lot of different ways. I don't know exactly what went on in the production process that led to it, but $13.1 million after 2 weeks, not looking very good for that movie. This is another one where it's been a little hard to track down production budgets. Raya and the Last Dragon, $109 million worldwide. Again, it's still making money domestically, at least $1 million a weekend. But at the end of the day, I think it's really lost a lot, and Disney really has not been looking very good during this entire process. Godzilla vs. Kong, $429 million. So as you can see, it really has slowed down a lot. It's only really creeping up a couple of $1 million or so worldwide every weekend, and all of these weekends count because, as I keep on mentioning, that giant number, 188 million from China, means that they still have a lot of money they need to make back in order to break even, again, just based off of the typical models that we would use. Same goes with Mortal Kombat as well, with $79.6 million, and with this film being lucky in that it has not gotten a China release, and so most of the film is coming from, or most of the profit is coming from countries that don't take nearly as heavy of a cut as you would see from other places overall. So going over then to the website, so this is a my website, ombreviews.home.blog. I do a film and TV preservation project. If you want more information about that, you can check out the website. I also do box office tracking. So this is where every weekend, typically Sunday or Monday, I update the numbers so that way you can see exactly how things are looking. But as you can see, as of the second weekend, films like Spiral were at $19 million. Those Who Wish Me Dead was at $13 million. Wrath of Man at $45. Mortal Kombat at $66. Those were the second week numbers for those films, which came out a little while ago. And I have, of course, my various projections. And so as you can see, Spiral, which we did get a production budget of $20 million for, is set to lose anywhere between $7 million and $13 million. Right now, it is sitting at around negative $18 million. I've not updated this in a few days. So at the time of the when the chart was updated, it was at 19 million. Again, it's gone up 23 million, and so therefore it's not nearly as bad as it had been, but that's obviously still over $10 million in loss that it has to make up. And with the fact that it has seen a drop, and I don't really know exactly how well it's going to do. My projections say the best worldwide it'll do is around 38 million. We'll, of course, wait and see on that. My numbers can sometimes be wrong because obviously COVID era makes it even more difficult to predict these things, let alone proper production budgets, etc. But as I said before, those who wish me dead, Wrath of Man, I would have predictions for. I just haven't been able to track down any actual budgets for those movies. And so please let me know in the pinned comment down below if you can actually find those. And as I said before, you have massive financial losses for a lot of these other movies, including like Mortal Kombat, Godzilla vs. Kong at -$34, -$40 million respectively. I did in the beginning have a projection that Godzilla vs. Kong would break even with getting at least $6 million, but that just really hasn't come to fruition. It's still at around -40, and this is not considering the very small amount it gets from China. And so this number is actually a lot larger as far as the financial loss is concerned. But as I mentioned, this is just based off of the box office numbers, and it's not based on opinion. It's just the data that we have available. It's based off best estimates, and it's based off of typical equations that tend to be able to figure these things out, which again, depending on the film, depending on what's going on, may not be the most reliable, but it is the best that we have to go off on. But what are your thoughts about these two things? So obviously the box office breakdown. Are you, were you excited to see any of these films that came out recently with Spiral? I know I myself am very excited to see the upcoming A Quiet Place Part 2, which comes out this weekend. I believe it actually debuts tonight, so very excited to go watch that. Hopefully I'll be able to have time, but obviously with Baby Thor, that's become a little bit more difficult, but it is one of my most anticipated films of the year, as it was last year before it got pushed back because of COVID. So let me know your thoughts about these various things, and also, what are your thoughts about this situation going on with Amazon acquiring MGM? Are you excited about this? Do you think that this is a good thing for movies? I personally think this is going to continue to bolster the streaming marketplace, but by bolstering the streaming marketplace, it means you'll have less franchises and less movies coming out in a big way in theaters. And at the end of the day, I think that that's going to have a very negative impact. But let me know your thoughts about all of these things in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon and Subscribestar members for the month of May. Ali C83, Andrew Hoyle, Biffer the Hobbit, Brian P, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Laura the Modern Major General's Story, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Chat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Odin, Steve Glasker, Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B. Thank you all very much for being my Patreon members this month. I really always appreciate you. And to my Subscribestar members, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand For, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heist, the new number 2, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, Nevadanji Adams, and ZK-Man. Thank you very much for supporting me on Subscribestar, and if you want your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, please consider joining on Patreon or Subscribestar. And if you join at some of the higher levels, you get access to things like giveaways, where every month I do giveaways of 4K titles, steelbooks, and Blu-rays. And again, more information can be found over on Patreon and Subscribestar. And at the higher levels, you also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast, depending on our schedules. We at least get one long podcast out. We try and get 2 podcasts out as often as we possibly can every single month with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. So again, check out more information. And if you are at the Chosen of Valhalla level, which is the highest level available, you not only get all of those things, you also get in your first month a free t-shirt and also access to the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where I have my Chosen on a stream talking, asking questions, answering questions questions, talking about movies and anything that they want to talk about. So if all that stuff sounds like fun to you, check out those links below and support the channel in whatever way you can. I do appreciate you, whether you are a member, whether you are a supporter on Patreon Subscribe Star, or whether you are simply supportive in general, leaving comments and likes. I really greatly appreciate it. You guys are all amazing, beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.